Hello everyone, my name is Owen, and welcome to the 7th episode of Magic Monday, where I talk about anything and everything related to the popular trading card game Magic the Gathering. Recently, the full set of official spoilers for Phyrexia All Will Be One has been released on Scryfall.com, and with it, the perfect opportunity for a new video. Today, I'll be ranking all of the legendary creatures from this set on a tier list from worst to best. Since Commander is the format that I'm most familiar with, I'll be ranking them in terms of their viability in a Commander deck, whether that be at the head of the deck or in the 99. I'll be covering a lot of cards today, 28 in total, so forgive me if I don't go too in depth into any one card. Starting out with the white creatures, we have the Big Bad, the face of the set, Elish Norn, Mother of Machines. I don't think that anyone will be arguing when I put her in A tier, since ETB triggers are extremely common in Commander, so being able to double your triggers while stifling your opponents is very good. On top of this, she has a relatively cheap cost, with a pretty beefy body. Then there's Kemba Ka Enduring, a cat cleric that synergizes with equipment. I'll be placing Kemba in the D tier, since she's easily outclassed by many other equipment synergies and mono white that aren't cat specific. Next, there's Mondrak, Glory Dominus. This dude is a Noida Procession on a 4/4 creature that can make itself indestructible, so I can confidently say that Mondrak belongs in the A tier. This dude is an easy inclusion for any token deck, and I'll definitely be adding him to my Gave deck in the near future. On to our last mono white creature, we have Skrullav, Defector Might. Its base stats and abilities are nothing special, with Toxic 1 being the most common keyword in the entire set, but its final ability is where it truly shines. Being able to protect another creature at instant speed is really powerful, even if it's only from a specific color, and making that creature unblockable by that color can definitely help win games in the right situations. All of that for just one Phyrexian mana. Unfortunately for Skrullav, I can't put him any higher than C tier. His final ability may be good, but he can't use it to protect himself, and without this, he's just a 1/1 that can't block. Now onto the surprisingly few blue creatures. There's Tekuthal, Inquiry Dominus, and Unctus, Grand Meditect. Tekuthal, similar to Mondrak, can give itself an indestructible counter, but unfortunately, its other ability isn't nearly as good as Mondrak's is. Proliferate is a pretty niche keyword, but when it does appear, such as in Atraxa or Roll-esque decks, it definitely has a lot of potential. Despite having few very powerful applications, I don't think that Tekuthal is very good anywhere else, so he'll be going in the C tier. Onto Unctus, he seems like a good addition to decks like Azami Lady of Scrolls, where you're able to tap creatures on command, but I don't really see him having much of an impact anywhere else. Similarly to Tekuthal, his abilities are a bit too niche to see widespread use, so Unctus will be put in C tier as well. Moving on to the black commanders, let's start out with our third Dominus, Drivnod, Carnage Dominus. Similarly to our previous two Domini, Drivnod can also give himself an indestructible counter, and his other ability is pretty good as well. Having Teysa Karlov on an 8/3 with indestructible is, needless to say, pretty powerful. Because of this, Drivnod will be our second Dominus to make it into A tier. Next, there's Geth, Thane of Contracts, who can reanimate creatures, but also gives them -1/-1. He definitely has potential to be very powerful in sacrifice decks, and in those decks, -1/-1 to all of your creatures isn't really that big of a deal. Because of this, Geth will be going into B tier. Then we have Caryomonix, the Rat King. This card is extremely powerful as a rat tribal commander, giving all of your rats Toxic 1, and being able to fetch rats off the top of your library on ETB. Since Rat Tribal usually goes super wide, creating tons of rats, the poison counters from Toxic can easily add up very fast. Despite not being playable in any deck but Rat Tribal, I'll be putting Caryomonix in S tier, as well as dubbing him with the title of Best Rat Tribal Commander. Now onto Kinzu of the Black Coven, yet another Phyrexian creature with a reanimation ability. Similarly to Geth, I think she'll find her home in the 99 of sacrifice decks, with her mediocre reanimation ability seeing little use anywhere else. Also, like Geth, I'll be putting her in the B tier, as they're both so similar in what they accomplish that I can't really justify putting her in any other tier. Finally, for the last of our mono-black creatures, we have Vran, Executioner Thane. To put it bluntly, this guy is kind of garbage. He would be a fine pinger, similar to Zulaport Cutthroat or Blood Artist, but that pesky little piece of text at the end of the card ruins it all. Only being able to drain your opponents for 2 life a turn at the cost of 1 or more of your creatures is horrible at best. Due to this, Vran will be sentenced to life in the D tier. Next up on the list, we have our 3 mono-red creatures, starting with Rook, Hexgold, Nabber. This little goblin definitely has some potential as a Voltron commander, but similarly to Kemba, he's outclassed by a multitude of other equipment and Voltron commanders in the same colors. This unfortunate fact means that he will be going in D tier. But wait, another goblin appears, this time being Slowbad Iron Goblin. The ability to sacrifice artifacts for mana is pretty good, but since you can only get mana equal to the CMC of the sacrificed artifact, you're going to have to sacrifice some pretty costly artifacts to get good value. While it might be good in situations where you need some quick mana to cast a big artifact, I don't really see it being super sustainable, so Slowbad will thus be put in the C tier. Our third and final mono-red creature is yet another Dominus, Sulfim Mayhem Dominus. I'm sure that I don't have to tell you again, but this creature can give itself an indestructible counter. This Dominus has the ability to double all non-combat damage that we would do to our opponents, which is actually pretty great. It's not at the level of Drivnod or Mondrak, but it's definitely better than Tekuthal, so Sulfim will be going right in between them, tucked cozily in the B tier. In terms of green creatures, we've only got 2, them being Thrun, Breaker of Silence, and Zopandrel, Hunger Dominus. Thrun has a lot of text, but all it basically amounts to is, look at me, I'm a really hard to remove 5/5, so he'll be going into C tier. Zopandrel, on the other hand, is actually pretty good. Not only can he give himself indestructible, like all the other Domini, but he's also just unnatural growth on a 4/6 with reach. The one caveat here is his mana cost, which is pretty expensive, making him challenging to get out. Despite that, Zopandrel is still very good, so he'll be going in B tier with his good buddy Sulfim. Now that we've gotten the monocolored creatures out of the way, we can move on to the multicolored ones. To start us out, there's Malcator Purity Overseer. His only gimmick is to make 3/3 Phyrexian golems on your end step, but only if 3 or more artifacts have entered the battlefield this turn. This ability is pretty bad, and it can be hard to activate, so from now on, the only thing Malcator will be overseeing is the D tier. You know, I've always wanted to see Venser come back, but not really like this. Venser Corpse Puppet is yet another card that is activated with Proliferate, being able to create a legendary 3/3 token, or give an artifact creature flying or lifelink whenever you do so. Like Tekuthal, this card is pretty much only viable in Proliferate decks, but unlike the blue Dominus, Venser's abilities don't synergize well at all with the cards commonly found in said decks. Because of this, Venser will be put in the D tier. Onto the Rakdos legendary, we get Kethek Crucible Goliath. Under normal circumstances, I would put this card in low C tier, since its ability doesn't really fit in with its colors, and it definitely has limited use. But its saving grace is definitely its combo potential. For example, if you were to have a deck with only 3 CMC creatures, with the exception of 1 2 CMC combo creature, you would have the ability to fetch that card from anywhere in your deck. As silly as it may sound, the goofy nature of this card is definitely won over my heart, so I'll be putting Kethek in B tier. Next, there's Miglaw's Maze Crusher, a 3-mana 4/4 with no downsides. On top of being a cheap but big creature, this absolutely monstrous card has 3 extremely powerful activated abilities, which I foresee will make it a menace on the battlefield. All these things come together to make Miglaw's the second card in the S tier. Then we get to one of the only humans on our list, Melira the Living Cure. Infect is a rarely seen archetype in Commander, so her first ability won't be that useful most of the time. And her second ability is mediocre at best. If she's in the 99 of a deck, you can only activate it once, and if she's your commander, you'll have to replay her to get any more value. Due to this, Melira will go in the D tier. Back to the Phyrexians, there's Rhea Ivor Bane of Bladehold, or as I like to call her, Rhea the Might-Making Machine. I can definitely see her being very powerful in the right situations, especially if she's paired with token doublers like Anointed Procession and Mondrak. All you need is a big creature to connect with an opponent once, and suddenly your board will be filled with mites, making you a dominant threat. Thanks to her interesting ability, Rhea has earned herself a spot in A tier. Next up, we get Ovika Enigma Goliath, a 6/6 with flying and Ward 3 pay 3 life. That's not all. It also makes 1/1s with haste whenever you cast a non-creature spell, which can really help an Izzet deck with offense and with defense. Unfortunately, it has a huge mana cost, making it challenging to get out, since Izzet has little to no viable ramp. Even with the expensive mana cost, this card is big, hard to kill, and has a pretty solid ability, so Ovika will be going in B tier. Now we see another returning face with Glissa Sunslayer. Overall, she's a pretty balanced card, being able to remove enchantments and draw you cards whenever she connects with a player. She also has the classic combo of First Strike and Death Touch, making her a potent blocker if need be. I'd say she fits well into A tier, since she's a cheap creature that nets good value in the long term. Jorkadeen may be the first Gold Warden, but he's the third bad equipment commander we've seen today. I've said it twice, and I'll say it again. It's an okay card, but he's simply worse at what he does than any other Boros equipment commander. It's with a heavy heart that I must put him alongside Kemba and Rook in the D tier. Speaking of threes, we have our third Proliferate commander, Azuri Stalker of Spheres. Like Tekuthal, this card is pretty much only useful in decks that are proliferating often, such as Atraxa or Roalask, and it isn't of much use anywhere else. Azuri is great at what he does, but what he does is super niche, so he'll be going in C tier. Our last multicolored card is Atraxa Grand Unifier. The Praetor's Voice is back and bigger than ever, literally. This 7-mana 7/7 has Flying, Lifelink, Death Touch, and Vigilance, making for a powerful and dangerous attacker. On top of this, she provides massive card advantage upon entering the battlefield, which can easily happen more than once if you use blink spells. Her color identity means that she's super versatile and can be put at the helm of tons of different decks. These powerful abilities and good flexibility are what makes her the third and final S tier card. Now, onto the final card of today's tier list, the only colorless commander in the set, Graz Unstoppable Juggernaut. I don't really have much to say about this guy. He's an expensive, big creature that has to attack each turn, and he turns all your other creatures into 5/3s that have to attack each turn as well. He isn't really good unless you're specifically building around his ability, so I'll be confining him to C tier for now. Wow, what a video! Covering and ranking all 28 different commanders was quite the hassle, but in the end, it was pretty fun, and I'll probably do it again for future sets. Looking at the finished tier list, we seem to have a pretty even spread of rankings, which I'm pretty happy with. It seems that black has the best cards overall, with only 2 black cards being below B tier. In terms of worst cards, I'd have to give that medal to blue, which only had a single card placed above C tier. I know how much this must hurt to hear, but that will be the end of today's video. I really hope you enjoyed this week's episode, as well as the tier list that came along with it. If you happen to disagree with any of the placements that I made during this video, please let me know in the comments below. Also, feel free to like and subscribe. It truly does help out the growth of the channel. And to all of you still here, thanks so much for tuning in, and as always, I'll see you next week.